problems such as nuclear problems and the international terrorism, which has been in picture since the 9/11, but which was rarely spoken about. And also, we'll be understanding about weapons of mass destruction, where the nuclear energies have taken over the as weapons of mass destruction, especially after Second World War, and with also Russia coming into the picture in 1949, how the world started to go on to have this Cold War era and what all treaties were done during this in reducing the weapons of mass destruction and all. And also, we'll be understanding about India's foreign policy and what role did India play in building up this international terrorist resolutions against international terrorism, then climate change, energy change, then human rights declarations, then violating or calling of those violating the ethnic rights, and also India's relationships with the major powers and India's relationship with its neighbors. So, in a way, we'll be understanding about how this modern day problems that we see today have evolved over the period. So, first coming to international economic cooperation. International economic cooperation is nothing but this is to bring the world in the purview of the economy, culture, and various other regions, because the countries forming the groups and business establishments can kind of sell their markets. This is basically to find markets to sell their products. So, in such way, we can understand how the economic cooperation has evolved. And the economic cooperation also means we can see the differences among the countries in economy, scientific, as well as technological relationships that they have between bilateral relation through establishing bilateral relationships or either through multilateral relationships. So this group or the countries where the relationships evolved, which are based on the principles of equality, independence, and advantage, is known as international economic cooperation. So this economic cooperation can be measured or can be seen through certain factors, such as increased global interdependence. Now we have seen that the world has been intertwined even before the globalization, as in concept, have come into the picture. Even before that, through various international organizations, we have understood that the global interdependence over a period have increased. So, with existing institutions and also evolving institutions over the period in the time, the increasing global interdependence have made countries. This can be seen with an example of WTO. So initially there was no World Trade Organization. So World Trade Organization was established around 1995-96, I think. Before that, the world had an organization with which is known as GATS, GATTS. So GATS undergoing Uruguay rounds, then came to an formation of an organization such as World Trade Organization, so which is basically made for the free trade and removing trade barriers between the countries. This is like countries have understood this, big richer countries have understood that the trade is a new economy, and if we want to hold on to uh, any country, then we need not start the actual war where the trade restrictions or trade tariffs could be considered as a new war. So, with keeping this in things in mind, this also led to improved economic interconnectivity, improved communications, improved uh, technology, and also increase in the relationship between these countries. Now, there are certain factors which led for the global interdependence to happen around the world. So, these factors are kind of like the factors of production, services, and transport, communication technology, which have considerably reduced the cost of these entities, and societies and individuals have taken the advantage of improved factors of production and also the declining factors of production, which have led to for the facilitating economic integration. And next, the public policies, which have significantly improvised or influenced around factors such as peace and also nation building, which have led in a direction where this integration could lead to. So then there are economic integrations, this type of economic integration can also be classified into certain factors, which are considered as free trade area, custom union, custom market, economic union, and political union. Now, what do you understand by free trade area? Means free trade area is a criteria where the agreements between two or more countries with a basic intention to create an economic cooperation between them and come to an agreement where the smooth and free and fair trade could be cooperated. So this can result in exchange of markets, in inviting new investments, which could also lead to increasing GDP of the country or foreign investments where the infrastructure could also be developed. So in free trade agreements such as such, the tariffs, the duties which are to be imposed upon the member countries could also be considered to a certain factor. So this concept of free trade area example could be seen in NAFTA. So which is seen between United States and also Swiss and Mexico. So there are certain advantages for this free trade areas, such as like this becomes the increased economic growth. This also leads to more dynamic business market area, or the exposure of the business will increase, where competition could be between the local products and the foreign products. Then it also encourages foreign direct investments, which can come into the trade areas. And this in turn boosts the finances, the GDP, and the domestic businesses, which could lead to the development. And also another thing is technology transfer, where these multinational partners, MNCs, also provide establishing certain companies where the technology could be transferred, and also the business opportunities could be provided for the development of employment. But there are certain disadvantages in encouraging such free trade areas, which could be seen, such as, let's suppose if a foreign country or an MNC will come and establish a company in certain area. Now, what instantly will happen is, because some FIA, foreign investment, can happen without having certain pros for the investors to be coming to India, right? So now what they'll say is, okay, we will establish factories, we will establish companies, but also we will choose only those people who we would like to have on board. So this could also lead to job outsourcing. So this outsourcing can cancel out the very purpose of establishing or giving permission to such companies for establishing the factories in certain areas. Then also it could lead to the theft of intellectual property, because intellectual property, the ideas, innovations could be stolen by the local industries in a purview of looking into from the MNCs that have come into those places. And also the domestic industries might have to be destroyed, because the superior technology based companies could come as an FII, then they may take over the local market also. Then another one is poor working conditions, because many of the multinational companies, what they do is like they'll outsource their jobs, they'll outsource their jobs to the place they have been in, but they do not consider this living or a working environment, whether it is constructed on based what do we call it, standards or not. Then also degradation of natural resources, of course, because emerging markets, they do not have any boundaries, they do not have any fine line. So with environmental protections coming into the picture, and the corporates from the developed countries, they take advantage of this, and it leads to unsustainable exploitation of natural resources. The next one is custom union. So custom union is an agreement which is created between two or more countries with an objective to do away with the trade barriers and abolish or reduce the custom duties, and eliminate the quotas in trade related aspects. So with this, the non-member states have a single payment like the duty free, where we see keep saying in airports, right? Duty free products bolke. So when they trade with the members in a customs union, they have to do it in single payment, and they can trade freely without no added tariffs. So, but the purpose of this customs union is to enable the member states trade freely with one another. They can cancel out the extra taxes or the tariffs that they could pay. So the member states also, the thing is like, they do not enjoy the luxury of forming their own trade deals and custom unions, but they have to build up or do a networking where they can maximize for the gain of their membership. Now, there are certain advantages of this customs union, which is increase in economic integration and trade flows, and also the customs union also facilitates the trade creation. Now, what is trade creation? Trade creation is something which happens more efficiently, where the members of the custom union sell their goods to the less efficient members of the same entity. So this, in a way, the resources can be allocated or distributed with not not increasingly exploiting the natural resources. Then another one is, it takes uh, less efficient members of the custom union will take advantage of the situation, and in a way they can also sell more goods of them in the customs union. But there are certain disadvantages to that of customs union, is because there is loss of economic sovereignty, because it has to negotiate trade as a single entity, and these member states are not individually allowed to negotiate their own deals. Now they have to act as per the rules and the regulations of the custom union. So here they are losing their sovereignty on the trade. Then distribution of tariff revenues, because the revenues in the country and the customs union, where the distribution could not be fair sometimes. And another one is complexity of setting of the tariff rate. So the complexity is basically the time consuming, the process is time consuming, and the tariff rate is not same all over. So that's why there is complexity in setting the tariff rate. Then the next to another factor is common market. So the common market is a group or an agreement between member states which adopts an external tariff so that they can have trade among themselves. But also, the member states can also practice free trade and allow the movement of capital and labor into the common market. So, this common main objective of this is to improve the economic benefits to all the states of a common market. But in common market, this all the barriers whatsoever exist with the free trade area or customs union like quotas, tariffs, which are related to the exporting and importing of goods and services, are removed. So common examples of this common market is Mercosur. So Mercosur is an economic and political bloc. So Mercosur consists of Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, Uruguay, and Venezuela. Then another such common market is East African Common Market, and another one is West African Common Markets. Now there are certain benefits for this common market is, it is to be considered a single market. So as it's a single market, then the inflow and outflow of the goods is also quite common. They cannot be hindered by custom duties, or they cannot be hindered by tariffs. So it's a win-win situation. And also this might lead to efficiency in production, because the factors of production are allocated to you best use of these products. Then there are certain disadvantages of this common markets, because common markets in the whatever the country which is less competitive is a disadvantage, because they cannot provide any subsidies or production to their domestic industry, because if there are 5 countries and they have formed this common market area, then in that, at least if 3 countries are having technological industries where they can produce proper items or goods, and the services have to be implemented, then the countries which do not have such markets, which do not have such technological improvements, will be at disadvantage, because their markets will be taken over by the markets, by the markets of the states where there is an advantage, or where there is an advancement in technology. Then it also leads to trade diversion. So trade diversion happens where the non-members are crowded out of the common market, and the trade diversion takes place. So because in such a way, the countries may also witness lower wages and influx of migration are certain some of the important factors. The next one is economic union. So economic union is kind of a trade bloc in which the customs union, and it is a combination of customs union and a common market. So common market means they'll have common policies, then they have freedom of goods and movement, then they have common product regulation, they have common factors of production. So which an economic union which forms its domain, and it becomes an economic and monetary union. So examples of economic union is Central American Common Market, European Union, Eurasian Economic Union, and Gulf Cooperation Council. So certain advantages is the economic union uh, attains stable financial situation because it is injecting a lot of funds in underdeveloped areas, and weaker economies. And exchange of technology and products also happen among member countries. And the economic taxes, if we talk about the economic union, also helps in lowering prices of the member state, which can also lead to reduction in duty tax, and which in a way facilitates export and imports. But certain disadvantages is the countries in this economic union are not to be treated as an equal partner, because some countries really try to dominate and take over others. And if we are talking about economic point of view, the economic independence may be lost because countries have to be forming a common market. Then cultural changes also will happen because better skilled and well educated people leave the country because they have better opportunities in other countries of the economic union. Now, next one is political union. So, political union means all small states come together and form a big uh, creation of big state, which is called unification. Because individual states in the political union, they have a common government. Okay, so they try to form a common government. So with that, it is there. Then advantages is it provides an uh, then the thing is like it also incorporates creation of a new state by dissolving the existing one. This can be seen in an act of 1707. So with this, the federal union is also one of the such feature where state is recognized in an international law. and the confederation or states come together and form a unified state. This can be seen in Canada, then United States, and also this is confederation, whereas in India we have federation. Then the federative annexation also happens where the Prince Edward Island, British Columbia, Newfoundland were all annexed into Canada, and Texas, Vermont, California were all annexed by United States of America. Because if in federal annexation, what happens is a single state, unitary states, turns into a federal unit of another existing states. Then another one is called mixed unions. So mixed unions um, is an area where the common political union takes place through different processes, and also the voluntarily this Kingdom of Sardinia has resulted in formation of Kingdom of Italy, and Papal States and Kingdom of Two Sicilies were also conquered and annexed. Now, advantages is political union helps to prevent wars by creating interdependency. It also maintains army, so common army. So if there's a common army, then the expenses of a single country might come down. Then there is also reduction and removal of tariffs, and also spreading of different cultures among these countries, and also it helps protect each other at the time of crisis or in terms of defending from a strong aggressor or an outsider. Then disadvantages is political union decreases the importance of nations, and they tend to lose their identity and independence. They also result in cultural hybridization. They also result uh, in a condition where this all the countries, their laws or regulation do not fit into a single common country, and also they can be sometimes undemocratic and also result in loss of sovereignty of the other nations. Now, the aftermath of this economic cooperation, we come to a new concept of North-South dialogue. So, North-South dialogue means northern region and the southern regions. These are like, suppose there's an equator which is running through the world. Then upper part is northern region and down part is southern region. Usually, the North-South is referred to as the richest industrialist and non-communist countries of the north, whereas southern countries, on the other hand, refers to developing or the third world. So then, what do we call it? The northern region states like United States, Australia, Canada, Japan, New Zealand, like the Europe, etc. So it also differs with how the average per capita income of the people, how the GDP of these countries usually recognized over a period. And here, the third world countries or the southern countries are also known as developing countries. So, this north south discussions where there are certain criteria of countries in the world which exist and how these need to be understood have always been conducted or they spoken about at various summits, conferences, and various discussions have been also done. So the discussions of UN Security Council, where G8 countries met, and the conferences of non-aligned movement have also led to where G8 countries and this non-aligned movement have helped in solving the problems facing by this developing countries in or the southern countries. So there are certain objectives of this North-South dialogue. So the certain objectives is like developing countries seek financial assistance, technical assistance from the developed countries, which could also lead to a balanced growth and which in turn leads to a removal of poverty. And also coming to trade, these southern countries can seek support from the developed northern countries and expand their exports or which can also lead to decreasing the problems of deficit. Now they can also seek advantages of taking ideas or technological advancements from these richer developed countries. Now the gap between this north and south developed countries have led to a concept of drawback in state of affairs in economic order, which was subsequent to World War II. So now the international instruments such as IMF, GATS, which is General Agreement on Tariff and Trade, then IBRD, they are kind of in favor of developed countries because most of the funding is done by developed countries to this. So in this aftermath, the Bretton Woods structures, which is World Bank and IMF, which was created after the Second World War, they kind of acted as a disadvantage to developing countries because they have created a policy which is called restructuring policy. So this restructuring policy, with the purview of World Bank, where World Bank was more interested in providing relief to the war-torn areas, and it hardly took any care of or need of the people living inside that of developing countries. So although the task was to have long-term development, but it did really ignore the human existence. So the developing countries overall by 1960s came together and they witnessed the reformation of international trade, and also they have been members of United Nations. Now this developing countries has raised issues of economic inequalities and formed pressure groups uh, known as Group 77, with an exert appropriate pressure on various international bodies in order to bring structural changes. So this has led to creation of an international community in 1964, which is known as UNCTAD, which is United Nations Conference of Trade and Development. So this is an agency under United Nations General Assembly. So this agency is established for the tariff favorable to the developing countries and increase trade with them, and also address trade related issues, which could also be a lending hand to developing countries, which can reduce the gap in economy, gap in trade between the developed and developing countries. Now, this further led to creation of new international economic order in 1974. So, in United Nations General Assembly, in its sixth special session, called for the establishment of a new international economic order, which could also put an implementation further. So, this new international NIEO, new international economic order, is in fact an aggravating thing where inequalities of the old relationships would focus on that. So the financial and the monetary crises which formed during these nations or formed with these nations have contributed to their change in thinking, and also the conferences held by these countries form giving a concrete shape to the proposals. So the United Nations General Assembly adopted a resolution in 1979 which created the NIEO, and this resolution main goal is to conduct global talks and build a framework on raw materials, energy, trade, currency, and matters related to finances to be discussed and to be able to have progression, to be able to have progress with the developing countries. So this United Nations, what it did was it did not want to give any wrong notion to the developing countries that it was not obeying to forming such talks, because the expansion of multinational cooperation of uh, United Nations in developing countries could need lead to boost of their economy in USA. and it also led to Cancun Summit Conference in 1981. Now, what happened in Cancun Summit Conference is there are around 8 developed countries and 14 developing countries. They met, and the main focus of the conference were on issues related to structuring the proposals for global negotiations, and also the agencies of International Monetary Fund and the World Bank should be responsible for the United Nations. So, but the developing countries, the developed countries such as United USA, Britain, and West Germany, the decisions that were taken usually by IMF and the World Bank within their limits were final and independent of any authority, but they were endorsed by these bigger democracies. So the ideas, the policies were also pushed by these higher organizations. So, so it led to the freeze of this North South dialogue in 1984, and various multilateral institutions in the developed countries have confronted with the new problems pertaining to the resources matching the growing needs of the economies. Now let us talk about South-South cooperation. So meanwhile, as the North-South dialogues have come to an halt, the southern countries or developing countries have started to build a relationship among themselves in extending cooperation or in extending the political, economic, social, cultural, and the technological areas of the uh, South countries. So they have been formed together and adopted a non-aligned movement as a foundation principle for collective self-reliance among developing nations. So the South-South cooperation also looks into how the collaboration has been existing and established among the countries of the South in political, economic, and environmental notion. Now, there are certain objectives of South-South cooperation because the most self-reliance of these developing countries could be improved by making providing a creative capacity to find solutions, and also to strengthen and promote self-reliance, and they can also be improved by necessary capacity building, and also identifying and analyzing solving the main issues of, which is called as issues of development, and also create new technological facilities, and also strengthen the existing ones in the developing countries for absorbing and adopting new technologies and skills for meeting the developmental needs. Now, the rather basic elements of the South-South cooperation is it leads to self-reliance of developed countries. It leads to the self-reliance. It leads to that solidarity. It leads to economic independence, and also common objectives of South-South cooperation. And the countries of the South, they have to cooperate its agenda of South-South cooperation. Then South-South cooperation should not be viewed as a replacement to North-South cooperation, because they should be treated as a different area of interest for measuring and adjusting the declined interests of the developed countries of the world. See, the conception, cooperation between the countries and belonging to South Asia is is not evaluated and analyzed using the same yardsticks that are used for measuring. So, so the South-South cooperation also provides the developing countries a more active role in foreign policy, in decision-making processes, and in their support to the achievement of sustainable development. The mechanisms and the modalities for the common people, as founded on interregional and sub-regional and bilateral cooperation, and integration along with multilateral cooperation. So this is not south uh, notion. Now let us understand about IVRD, IMF, UNCTAD, UNCTAD, then GATT, then WTO. So the United Nations and Financial Cooperation, which is 41 now, sorry, 44 nations were held in Bretton Woods. So USA in July 1994, it proposed the establishment of IMF and IBRD. It would be released, but in the second 1948 to 1994, the trading system came to an end, and IMF, IBRD, and GATT, originally in wartime planning, has become a better economic future of these developing countries. So UNCTAD is a major institution which gives preferential treatment to the developing countries. So the economic, now if we talk about International Monetary Funds or the World Bank, how they came into the picture. So then we, or the Bretton Woods institutions, how it came into existence. So we can understand about their working and functioning. So the Bretton Woods institutions, we should will be learning about IBRD, IMF, UNCTAD, GATT, and WTO. So in IBRD, it was established International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. It was established in 1945, and IDA, International Development Association, it was established in 1960. They both combined together known as World Bank. So IBRD and IDA are the three institutions, are the two of the institutions of the World Bank, and the remaining three institutions is International Finance Corporation (IFC), Multinational Investment Guarantee (MEGA), and International Center for Settlement of Investment Disputes (ICSID). So now what happened is World Bank is addressed as one of the largest sources of funding and knowledge for developing countries in 2018. Now, structure of World Bank, now IBRD is governed by uh, Board of Governors. Then Board of Governors is a supreme policy making body. So Board of Governors will have the head, the chief governor, and also Board of Governors will meet annually. So the delegates of its authority over daily matters, and also it meets regularly since 1 month uh, to carry the work of the World Bank. And also the president of World Bank can be chief executive bank and is responsible for the conduct of day-to-day businesses. So objective of the World Bank is to have long run capital, to have investment for balanced development, to guarantee loans granted to small, large units, to ensure implementation of projects, to promote investing in member countries. Then functions of World Bank is to support the countries, the third world countries, through policy advice by providing research and analysis and also technical assistance. So, under the name of capacity building, the World Bank also gives or grants loans to the member countries up to 20% of its share in paid up capital. Then, role of World Bank is providing loans for the development works to the member countries, and it providing long-term goals for the developing for the various development projects. లాంగ్ టర్మ్ గోల్ అంటే ఒక can be from 5 to 20 years of duration. Then two goals to achieve by 2030. Then the goals to extend extreme poverty and a decreasing percentage of people living on below the systemic level and promote their property by fostering their economic growth. So World Bank is also acting as a source for financial, technical, and assistance to developing countries. Then IMF, International Monetary Fund. So IMF is established in 1945. 29 members joined back then, and it was also signed by those 29 men. And what happened is in 1947, France also the first country to borrow the IMF, and the IMF membership began to expand during 1950 and 60s due to decolonization which is happening in the world. So then the resources of IMF could be seen from the two sources. So first one is subscription by members in the form of quotas through the payment of quotas or attention of 19, since the 1950, which has been long pending for the developing countries to generate the least developed countries. So now the structure of World Bank. So the IMF, which also has the board of governors, executive body, managing director, and staff of international servants. So the decision making, we can see it can be done very properly. And the functions is it is short term credit institutions, unlike World Bank, which is long term. So it is a short term institution, and also the mechanism it provides for the long term balance of the payment position, and also mechanism for international consultations. It brings together the representatives of the member countries of the reconciling and the conflicting claims. So now the main role of IMF is to help the governments in meeting challenges by economic development and the globalization. It also ensures that the member countries play an important role and stop the fluctuations of economic policies, which could also uh, control the another economic crisis from happening. Then IMF also tracks global economic trends and alerts its members by providing them financial members in economic difficulties. And IMF also responded to the needs of the markets. The next one is UNCTAD, United Conference on Trade and Development. So it was formed in 1964 by United Nations General Assembly, and it is a organ of UN. And so for the establishment of UNCTAD, Raul Prebish, the first General Secretary, has helped or supported the establishment of UNCTAD. So the global conference was held in Geneva in 1964. And since then it had held 14 conferences. Then structure and organization of UNCTAD. So the structure is United Nations UN UNCTAD is an organ of General Assembly. Then it is a specialized agency. It is neither a specialized agency or supreme governing body. Then the structure, which consists of confident formulate a global policy on trade, then the communism on European busters, where the secretary, the Commission in Trade on Trade, Goods and Services and Commodities, and the uh, audit has been carried out by executive body of the conference. Now, the proper principles for the UNCTD is like it has given every country the right to freely dispose its natural resources for the economic development, which they can have free trade with other countries. And it also allows the principles of sovereignty and equality of the states. It also says that there shall not be any discrimination on the basis of differences in socio-economic systems. Then UNCTAD also has certain functions. So these functions are to promote international trade between developed and developing countries, to formulate the principles of policies on international trade, to negotiate multinational trade agreements, to promote research and negotiations for developing countries, to act as a center for harmonious trade relationships and policies. Now, the importance of UNCTAD is it is active in technology operation in developing the country. It also plays a leading role in, developing countries and countries to achieve economic progress. So, in UNCTAD, and the generalized system preferences, export and import can be export and import of some agricultural goods from developing countries, and UNCT Secretariat plays an important role in issue. Issues generate ideas and influencing thoughts, policies, and actions in international secretary countries. Next one is GATS, which is General Agreement on Trade and Tariff. Before WTO, this was the organization that looked into the trade. So the GATS is an explosion of post-war era, and it came into existence on 1948 January 1st, and also Geneva-based 128 nations. GATT at the same time has modified around two-thirds of the members belonging to the uh, developing nation. Now, basic objectives of GATS is to follow an unconditional MFN, which is most favored nation, to carry out trade on principles of non-discrimination, to grant protection to domestic industry, to liberalize tariff and non-tariff measures through medical negotiation. Now next comes the conventions of the GATT. So the fundamental principle of GATT is the trade should be carried out on a non-discriminatory basis. The domestic industry should only be protected by means of customs, tariffs, and commercial measures. So there are certain talks which held for the GATS to be turned into WTO. So this we can learn in next class, which is tomorrow. So tomorrow we'll be also learning about the uh, how the GATT 8 round of talks and how GATT transferred from GATT to WTO with Marrakesh Treaty. Then we'll also learn about what is WTO and why China exited from WTO. Then we'll learn about what are MNCs and what are the consequences of them and characteristics, and also how the globalization and MNC both combination could lead to progressive world and underlying causes of disadvantages. So tomorrow we'll be learning about all those things. I hope you understood this class. So this is Navyashri, and see you all tomorrow.